Welcome. The race for an Alzheimer's cure is one of the biggest challenges in modern medicine. But what if the problem isn't just the disease itself? What if the way we're running the race, the very design of our studies, is fundamentally flawed? Today, we're going to dive into a massive technological shift that's basically rebuilding the entire racetrack, and it could change the game for millions of people. So for decades, right, these clinical trials have been just incredibly slow, super expensive, and honestly, really exclusive. Get this, a promising treatment might fail not because it's a dud, but because the system we use to test it actually weeds out the exact people it's designed to help. That's the real puzzle we're tackling today. How do we fix this broken system so we can actually get to the finish line and get there faster? Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the current trial bottleneck. Then we'll get into the exciting stuff, a new digital toolkit that's being used to fix it. We'll see how this leads to way better trials and data, makes the research more inclusive, and finally, we'll peek at what the future holds. All right, first up, the trial bottleneck. We've got to understand the problem before we can get to the solution, and trust me, this has been a huge roadblock for researchers for a very, very long time. So take a look at this, because it really lays out the disconnect. On one hand, you've got these old school trials. They have super rigid rules. You need to have a specific amount of amyloid plaque, that sticky protein stuff that builds up in the brain, and you have to prove it with a really expensive PET scan. The result? A ton of people get screened out, and you end up with a study group that doesn't look anything like the real world. But then, on the other hand, you have the reality for actual patients. They come from all walks of life. Most can't get access to these fancy diagnostics, and just participating in a trial is a massive logistical nightmare. Okay, so how do we fix this mess? Well, to bust through that bottleneck, researchers are bringing in a whole new digital toolkit. They're basically redesigning the entire racetrack from scratch. And that brings us right to the big question, doesn't it? If the old tools are what's slowing us down, then how in the world do we build a trial that's faster, smarter, and, this is key, more inclusive for everybody? The answer, as you might guess, is all about technology. So first up in this new toolkit, something called digital biomarkers. Just think of them as objective health signals. We're talking about things like sleep patterns, how someone speaks, or even their fine motor skills. This data is collected all the time by things you might already use, like a smartwatch or a tablet. What's amazing is that it gives researchers a window into a patient's real, everyday health without them having to constantly schlep to a clinic. And then there's this. This is another powerhouse tool, EEG-based biomarkers. Now, EEG, that's a bit of a mouthful, but what it does is incredible. It's a totally non-invasive way to measure the brain's electrical activity. We're talking millisecond precision here. It lets scientists literally see, directly, how a treatment is impacting brain function. It's a way more sensitive and immediate signal than anything we've had before. Okay, so we have these new tools. What's the actual impact on the science? Well, a perfect example is a study from Cognito Therapeutics called Overture. And as we're about to see, the results are, well, they're pretty profound. It's not just about the data. It's about transforming the entire experience for patients. And this is really the crucial point. Think about how this tech just completely changes the game for the people in the trial. Suddenly, you can do assessments from your own home. That means the burden on patients and on their caregivers is just massively reduced. It sounds simple, but that one change makes it so much easier for people to sign up and, just as important, to stay in the study. And that, right there, speeds up the whole research timeline. And here's the kicker. A better patient experience leads directly to better science. It's that simple. Instead of just getting a few snapshots when someone comes into the clinic, researchers now get this rich, continuous stream of data. They can track how a patient is actually doing out in the real world. This creates a much more dynamic, much more complete picture of how a treatment is working over time. And you get all of this without sacrificing any scientific rigor. All right, let's talk about what might be one of the single most important results of this whole shift, and that's making research more inclusive, making sure the science we're doing is for everyone. I mean, this chart says it all, doesn't it? Traditional trials have these huge walls to climb, super expensive tests, massive travel and time commitments, and these barriers hit people from underrepresented communities the hardest. But a digital approach? It just knocks those walls down. It gets rid of the pricey gatekeeping tests, cuts down on travel, and opens the door for a much, much more diverse group of people to participate.
And let's be clear, this isn't just about fairness, though that's a huge part of it. This is about better science. As Cognito CEO Christian Howell says, this diversity is absolutely essential. It strengthens something called external validity. All that means is that the results are more likely to actually work in the real world for all kinds of different people, not just the small select group that could get into the old trials. It's how we make sure that when we find a therapy, it actually works for everyone who needs it.
So, where do we go from here? Well, it really feels like we're standing on the edge of a brand new era in research. The path forward is finally starting to look a lot clearer. And this is huge. The regulators, groups like the FDA, they're getting on board. They're showing more and more support for using these digital biomarkers in big, important clinical trials. Of course, they have to be validated, they have to be meaningful, and they have to be secure. But having that support, that's what's paving the way for this to become the new standard. So you can see the pathway this technology creates. It's a pretty powerful one. Step 1, you can detect early signals that a treatment is working way faster than before. Step 2, you use those insights to design smarter, more efficient pivotal trials. And step 3, the ultimate goal, you completely transform how we care for patients with Alzheimer's and really any neurodegenerative disease. And that really leaves us with a final, pretty exciting thought. For decades, we've been stuck trying to figure out if a treatment works by using these slow, indirect clues. But now we have tools that let us see the impact on the brain itself, practically in real time. So the question isn't really if we can conquer these diseases anymore. The question is, with this new racetrack and these new tools, just how much faster can we get to that finish line?